What's up guys, welcome back. Today we're gonna look at this tube bender you see here behind me. Now, believe it or not, the number one question I get asked all the time, hey, what kind of tube bender is that? And it kind of honestly just blows my mind because if you Google the word tube bender, this bender is gonna be all over your phone screen. Put a little effort into it, guys. For the guys that don't have cell phones and can't use Google, we're gonna take a look and I'm gonna show you how this thing works. And I'm gonna show you everything that I've done to it that it doesn't come with, that just makes working with it a little easier. So we're just gonna dive right in. So loading the tube, slide it in, or if you want it, put this little U strap over, drop the pin in, and then just tighten it up. And then you're ready to bend. So if you're wondering what these handles are for, say you bend this tube however many degrees, this cylinder has no spring return. It's air hydraulic, so it doesn't have hydraulic return. You have to manually retract it. So I just put these on here so I can kind of easily pull it back. It gives me something to kind of rest my hand on just while I'm waiting on the tube to go around. So you can get springs for a spring return or make your own so that it will manually return as soon as you twist this little knob and relieve the pressure. I opted to not do that just because I've been so many different sizes of tubing and thicknesses of tubing, and spring back's always different. And sometimes it's good to judge, you know, what your spring back's gonna be. So speaking of spring back, that is what these are for. I wrote this a long time ago. They're kind of just in my brain now. I don't really need them wrote down. So if you're bending inch, and all these are 1 3/4 because that's the main thing I do, but 1 3/4 ERW tube, 120 wall is gonna spring back 3 degrees, DO is gonna spring back 5 degrees, 95 wall ERW is gonna spring back 2 degrees. So what that means is if you're gonna bend a 90 and you stop the needle at 90 or wherever, it's gonna spring back 3 degrees. So you need to go to 93. Now it can vary some. That's also another reason why I like to look at it every time rather than just thinking that it is what it is. So for instance, you bend one 15 degrees, even if it's ERW 120 wall, it may only spring back 2 degrees instead of 3. You get on up past 100 degrees, 110, it may spring back 5 degrees. That number, that 3 degrees is just the general from 30 to 80 that I normally, or 30 to 90 that I normally would bend. So I added this little shelf here. I bought this bender secondhand, so it did have this center piece here. He had it bolted in the floor. He didn't have it hydraulic. He was bending motorcycle frames with it. So I went back in, and once I made it hydraulic, I made this little T-stand and the cross brace to hold the dies, and I added all that on. And obviously put casters on it so it'll roll. The air hydraulic is a cylinder from Harbor Freight, which has now been discontinued. I think you can get one that'll work from Northern Tool and maybe even Amazon. The bracket is from Swag Off-Road, and these welds are my very first welds back when I had a Lincoln 140. So they're ugly. I guess I could redo it, but I kind of like to leave them on there because I get to look at them every day and remind myself how much better a welder I am now. And here's another little shot of the brackets I made to hold the mic grips. And then this one's a little more simple. So it's a flat piece. Uses the bolts that are already there. I think I may have used a longer bolt maybe. These are definitely not the ones that came with it. So the degree wheel on a JD2 bender is super simple. They just have this little degree wheel with all the marks on it. They send you a piece of TIG wire, you wrap it around this bolt, and once you preload your tube, you just set this to 0, and that's it. So the little cross brace I made, I just put some studs on it and used it to hang the dies. It was just gonna be to hang the dies and not the follower and the strap, which is why the little stud is almost too short. This one's the right length. but it works. So I also added a small little tray down here. I used to keep my tube notcher, I just set it on there. Now I just kind of use it. The 1 3/4 die, it stays in the bender most of the time. So whenever I switch to another one, I'll just drop it down here since it doesn't have a home on the crossbar here. So I recently bought a square tube die, and I obviously didn't have any space on the crossbar, so I've started adding dies to the side here. So the casters are just from Amazon. They're 2-inch casters, and they work really well. I had Harbor Freight on there before, and I had them on there for a really long time, but they were not meant to handle the weight, and they finally gave way. So make sure whatever casters you do buy, you make sure they'll handle the weight. These are actually the casters I had, not these because they broke, but that was the exact caster I had this whole bender on. And I didn't even have to use locking casters because this blue rubber would just completely flatten out and it wouldn't move. So if you're wondering what this stand here is, so what I use that for is if I'm bending a really long piece of tube, especially if it's got multiple bends in it, that's just kind of a stabilizer. Instead of trying to have a 10 feet piece of tube, you know, hanging way out here, you can use this stand and it rolls. So you just set the tube in there, and as it's bending, it'll roll with it. I just pinned it on, so I made it, and I just pinned it on the stand so it's easy to get off. And I made these little homemade pins. I can get that out of there. It's just a shoulder bolt cut off, and the top is a lug nut just so you can grab it easier. Angle finder. This thing usually lives on the bender, just kind of sits there. So this piece here, built this a long time ago. It was actually gonna go right here, so I mean you would take that nut off, but let's see. I was gonna bolt it there and then build like a little tray, just to have another place to set stuff. But I decided I didn't need another catch-all. The other small tray works pretty good. So here's a little stud where I hang the wrench for the dies. So the little washer tack down there is so when you put it over the bolt, it doesn't slip through to here. Makes it easier. And I have used this thing forever, and about a year ago, somebody on the Tube Bending Facebook page said it, and then I ended up asking someone else, and they said, yeah, once you go hydraulic, you don't need that. And that was a really good advice. So I struggle keeping tubes in plane, and I have a belief that this was the reason. So you get it really close, snug it up, tweak it again, snug it up, and it just seemed like always they'd be a degree or two out of plane. Ever since I stopped using this bolt, I never have an issue keeping a tube in plane. So that was some really good advice someone gave me. So there's gonna be another video on this bender where I'm gonna convert it to electric over hydraulic using Amazon parts. As I said in the video, the Harbor Freight cylinder has been discontinued. Mine's finally starting to leak after like 8 years, and I wanna get ahead of the game and go ahead and convert it so that I'm not dead in the water when the ram gives out. So I'm gonna do an entire video on that because JD Square quit selling their pump. So you could buy a kit from them with a cylinder and a pump. I reached out to them and asked them why it was listed out of stock, and they said that they do not plan on getting that pump back in stock, that ever since COVID, basically it's been a supplier nightmare and they don't think they'll get it back. They told me to go to a hydraulic shop or look on Amazon. So that's what I'm gonna do. So anyway, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And also, if you wanna hit that little bell, it will let you know every time that I post a new video. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you guys next week on the next video.